Good afternoon, folks. Thank you all for coming. How's Ignite been so far? Woohoo! Nice. Good. I'm glad that lunch didn't tone you down. This is great. Love an interactive audience. That's awesome. My name is Girish Chander. I'm one of the product leads in the Azure Active Directory team, and my team leads the hybrid identity strategy and focus, of which, of course, this is a critical component we're going to talk about today. My two partners in crime today are Ross Adams and Andreas Kelman, both of whom are senior program managers on the team. And over the next 75 minutes, we're going to try really hard to not put you asleep after lunch. But besides that, kidding apart, we're going to cover why Azure AD Connect is the best tool at your disposal to integrate your on-prem identity system with Azure AD and Office 365. Right? Now, I say Office 365 and Azure AD, but really, this is a critical component for you to actually start on, embark on, and integrate your cloud adoption journey, right? A lot of you have on-premises AD. A lot of you have users and groups established in there, applications in there. But increasingly, I guess you'll attest to the fact that a lot of your users, you yourselves in the room, are adopting a variety of SaaS applications. As you look to make that adoption secure, as you look to make that adoption of cloud apps powerful and enrich your employees with a more collaborative and productive experience, you need a modern identity management system that is adapted to the cloud. For those of you who've attended some of the EMS sessions over the past 2 days, you've seen a version of this slide, and we keep referring to identity as the core of enterprise mobility. And it really is, right? Because Azure Active Directory as that core of identity, as that central point of management of your identities and brokering control to all these cloud applications is critical for you to actually have that secure cloud adoption storyline, right? So within Azure Active Directory, we obviously offer a bunch of advanced services like self-service password resets, group management, and other sign-on capabilities to these variety of applications. But your journey really starts with connecting simplistically from on-premises to the cloud. And that's the focus of our talk today. But before we get there, let's talk about Azure Active Directory. We've had tremendous momentum ever since we've actually launched this. Obviously, Azure Active Directory had its beginnings with Office 365. How many of you in the room are on Office 365? Excellent. I see a great deal of adoption there. Awesome. Right? So we have about 86% of the Fortune 500 companies on one or more of the Microsoft Cloud services. And all of these services sit on Azure Active Directory. Right? But besides that, the Azure AD Premium offering, or the Enterprise Mobility Suite, which is the set of advanced capabilities you get with the core identity management system, that has taken off tremendously as well. We have more than 33,000 customers on that already. Right? But the scale that we operate at is humongous, right? We have more than 1 billion authentications on a daily basis, right? We have 600 million user accounts on Azure Active Directory. It is the largest enterprise directory in the planet, right? And so, regardless of where you are on your cloud on your cloud adoption storyline, regardless of what sector you're in, what vertical you're in, you can be sure that there is somebody who's actually made that transition ahead of you using our technologies. And some of the folks here that I called out are probably here in this room, right? So you're in good company. So I've been referring to Azure AD Connect, the single tool, the primary tool to integrate your on-premises Active Directory with Azure AD and the other services, right? So what is Azure AD Connect? We have two flavors of this tool that you can run on premises, one of which is an express settings mode. And everyone who actually does this integration with Azure AD or Office 365 goes through this Azure AD Connect toolset. And a majority of them choose an express settings mode, which, if you go through it in a matter of minutes, you could actually connect your on-prem directory with Azure Active Directory. Right? And that lays the foundation then to adopt a variety of different cloud applications that you can integrate with Azure AD. There are three components as part of Azure AD Connect. One of which is the vanilla synchronization. This is about taking your on-prem identities, your users, your groups, your domains, and moving that up and synchronizing that up into Azure AD, right? So think of it as sucking all your profile information and moving it to Azure AD. The second bit of it is configuring your sign-in experience. How do employees authenticate to Azure AD? There are a lot of customers who choose to federate on-premises with the cloud. So Azure AD Connect configures ADFS for you. If you don't have it already, it installs it and can configure ADFS for you to establish this federation so that when users authenticate, they can authenticate all the way back on premises. Now, ADFS is an optional component of Azure AD Connect. For those of you who don't want to actually go through the pain of installing ADFS and managing it on premises, there is actually another alternative that gets bundled in the sync component called password hash sync. We take a hash of the hash of your on-prem password and securely transmit it over an encrypted channel into Azure AD, where because we know the hashing algorithm, when the user authenticates in the cloud, we can actually compare the two hashes and prove that it's the same user, right? So it's not federation, but the users get this simple sign-on, if you may, where it's the same username and password that's both on-premises and the cloud. And a majority of our customers use password hash sync as their sign-in option. Later on in the deck, Ross will cover some of the new enhancements we're making in the space, but I won't steal his thunder just yet. The third part of this is new, relatively new. It's the health component. We call it the Azure AD Connect Health. And think of this as a monitoring service. It started off primarily as enabling you to monitor your sync components and your ADFS components, report on any issues with the service components, and with sync, as Andreas will cover in a bit, it also covers your sync error reporting. But it does a little more. It also monitors your Azure AD DS, your Active Directory domain services on premises. So think of this as a monitoring service that's bundled as part of Azure AD Connect that monitors different parts of your identity infrastructure, right? So these are the three critical components of Azure AD Connect. Now, in previous years, I will admit, we have actually released multiple versions of sync, and to a certain extent confused a lot of you, right? When Office 365 first came out, we released dir sync, and then a few months later, when customers said, hey, I have multi-forest, we said, okay, here's Azure AD Sync. And for those of you who said, hey, I have MIM or FIM on premises, we said, oh, here's a Azure AD connector that you can slap on and integrate with Azure AD Connect, with Azure AD. In the past year, when we released Azure AD Connect, we said, look, the storyline has indeed been confusing. So we've coalesced all of those sync components into the Azure AD Connect profile. So it's one sync engine that gives you all of the capabilities and more that the previous sync versions gave you, right? ADFS, before Azure AD Connect came along, was a separate thing that you had to install and configure. We've now bundled that as part of Azure AD Connect, right? But these legacy sync clients, in combination with Azure AD Connect customers, we have about 125,000 customers already using these various sync technologies, of which, in just the past few months, 95K of them are using Azure AD Connect, right? The reason I say this is because these old clients, dir sync, Azure AD Sync, these clients have now been marked deprecated. How many of you have received notifications or seen the fact that these were deprecated, right? How many of you have seen those notifications and not yet upgraded? All right, I want to talk to some of you who raised your hands, right? This is me lashing out and saying, hey, why haven't you done your job yet? But the reason we mentioned this is we marked these deprecated, and we're targeting April 2017 to actually cut support for these, right? And we've been sending our notifications through the Office 365 Notification Center, through Azure notification emails, to get customers to upgrade to Azure AD Connect. But it's not only because of this deprecation notice that you ought to be thinking about upgrading to Azure AD Connect. Azure AD Connect is the one tool set that we're going to focus our innovation on going forward. So a lot of the capabilities that Andreas and Ross will talk about today are actually being delivered only in Azure AD Connect. So if you want all those goodies, you need to transition to Azure AD Connect. Right? We made the upgrade of this really simple. So if you're running dir sync, if you're running Azure AD Sync, there's an in-place upgrade that you can do. But if you have too many objects, the tool will actually recommend that you do a side-by-side upgrade. Both are supported through the wizard and will guide you through the process. And Andreas has written copious amounts of documentation and delivered some videos that helps guide you through the process. So take a look at those, and you should be able to do this in a jiffy. But Azure AD Connect is not just about hooking up on-prem AD with the cloud. It's not just about saying, hey, let me trigger that cloud adoption journey. There's more to it. It's really a critical component to help you derive the maximum value out of the cloud back on premises as well, right? One aspect of this is how Azure AD Connect works with Windows 10 devices, right? One of the things we do, for example, in a Windows 10 device, when you join to Azure AD directly, right, you register a Microsoft Passport credential in the cloud. We can write that credential back on premises so that you can now, from that same machine, use the Microsoft Passport to authenticate to on-prem resources. We also sync critical attributes from on-prem to the cloud so that when the authentication happens, in the claim set, we put in some key attributes so that you can use Kerberos to authenticate to on-prem resources. So Azure AD Connect is more than just those three components. It actually does a lot more behind the scenes to help that hookup between on-prem and the cloud. Another aspect of the value here is actually a bucket of features that we loosely call write back, right? How many of you have heard of the self-service password reset feature in Azure AD? All right, good. Quite a lot of you. It is one of the most popular features in Azure Active Directory. And it's critical because it really helps lower your total cost of ownership. Most customers tell me that their primary IT cost comes from support calls regarding password resets. So with self-service password reset, you can reset your password in the cloud, and that's great. But what Azure AD Connect offers you is that you can now use SSPR in the cloud to reset on-prem passwords where they're authoritative, right? And so that password write back, as we call it, is critical to actually doing that, to offering that lower cost of ownership value prop. Let's switch to group write back. So you've heard a lot about Office 365 groups. If not, I think the previous session here was about Office 365 groups. You should take a look at those. But really, this is about unlocking the power of collaboration and productivity, right? And what we've done is through Azure AD Connect, we actually offer the ability to write back these Office 365 groups on-prem as distributed groups, right? So now you can use them on-prem as well, and you have this hybrid environment where you can use the power of these collaborative groups. Device write back. You've seen through the EMS sessions, you may have seen over the past couple of days, that we're investing a lot through the integration across Intune and Azure AD in terms of unlocking the power of conditional access, where you can use device-based attributes to determine who's got access to what application. It needs to be a blessed application by your MDM, should not be jailbroken, et cetera. All these device attributes. What we do with Azure AD Connect is we write back these registered devices in the cloud to on-premises. The reason we do that is for some of you who have ADFS, for example, and you have applications attached to ADFS, where ADFS is a claims provider, ADFS can use these attributes to have a conditional access control plane in ADFS to govern access to these on-prem applications. So that's another way we enable security with Azure AD Connect. And finally, if you have hybrid exchange environment, where you have one set of mailboxes on premises, another in the cloud, there are certain attributes that we actually write back so that your hybrid environment for exchange works as seamlessly from an end user perspective, right? So Azure AD Connect, as I said, is not just about your cloud adoption journey, it's a critical component to realizing the benefits of TCO reduction, realizing the benefits of collaboration in a hybrid environment, and realizing the benefits of security across your hybrid environment, right? So with that context established, Andreas and Ross are going to take turns and dive into some of the details of the components in here, right? Have fun, guys. I'll be back.
He'll be back.
I'll be back.
But first, I'm going to set some basics. So I'm going to take us 2 slides and summarize the Ignite 2015 talk I did on exactly the same topic. And this is really going to state the obvious. The purpose of Azure AD Connect is to take your on-premises Active Directory and synchronize it up to the cloud, but also for authentication, with password synchronization, or with federation. So basically, the flow will look like this. You have your, what we call the identity bridge, which is really Azure Active Directory Connect. Then from Azure Active Directory, you will continue to integrate with other SaaS applications, such as Google, Box, etc. That is a service we have in Azure Active Directory. But we also feed the identities over to Office 365 and your own applications. So we are having interfaces such as Graph, so you can lift and shift your applications from on-premises and up to the cloud. The other component, as Girish also mentioned, was health. So health is also something we install on-premises, is gathering information from your ADFS servers, from your Sync Engine server, and also from on-premises ADDS servers now in preview. And as Girish said, in Azure Active Directory, you can get a view of the health of all these components running it all from the cloud. And Azure Active Directory Connect was really designed with the mind that we are going to support an agile and complex organization. That was a common feedback we received from DirSync. DirSync only worked for single forest customers. So if you acquired another company, did you have to do a merge acquisitions? Well, sorry, dear customer, then you had to move from DirSync over to Azure AD Sync. And Azure AD Sync was, on the other side, only working if you were a multi-forest customer. It wasn't designed for the simple scenario. So that is really when we started to design Connect. It was really that we understood and hear that feedback from customers that, yeah, we start with something simple, but we want to grow. But also, I want to start with small because I want to do a pilot. I'm doing an Office 365 pilot. I only want 20 people from IT to actually do the pilot for me. So we did things like group-based filtering. You take a group, you add 20 users to that group, and only those 20 people will be in Office 365 and Azure Active Directory. But then you can grow. But we are trying to allow you to do customizations. DirSync was really a locked product. You couldn't customize anything in DirSync at all. But there are always some things you need to customize, certainly if you're a larger customer. So that was also one of the core design principles for Connect, to allow customers to make customizations in it. We also allow direct extensions that allows you to take other attributes you have in your on-premises Active Directory, extend the Azure Active Directory schema, allow you to lift your line of business apps from on-prem up to the cloud, and also give you some kind of high availability support with having 2 servers. It could be for high availability, as I said, that if one server goes down, you have another one that's ready to take over. Or it could be that when you want to make configuration changes, you start with one server, and when your spare server is in a good state, say, yep, this is a good one, you can basically shift responsibility over to your spare server, and then you can take your backup server back and make changes to it offline. My last slide on Ignite 2015 was really leaving you with this roadmap of things we're going to work for during next year. And now I'm back a year later. I'm going to talk about exactly those things. How we're going to connect to additional systems, not only Active Directory. I'm going to talk about Azure Directory Health and give you an idea of what that is. And I'm also going to talk about what we're doing when it comes to robustness from data. But first, let me start with a few good improvements we have made in Azure Active Directory in general, and this is really based on feedback we've heard. So one thing we've done is change the default sync cycle. So in DirSync, it was 3 hours. It was not supported to change it to any other value than 3 hours. I know quite many customers did change it to something else, but that was technically not to support the configuration. We also added automatic upgrade. In many cases, we noticed that you had a consultant, the consultant came in, installed DirSync, and then the customer was running a 3-year-old DirSync on the server and was never upgraded ever again. So with automatic upgrade, we will actually push out new versions of Connect to your servers as a service, so your customers will always have the latest and greatest version running on premises. This is really targeted to the same customers that are user-run DirSync, so it is for those that are doing the express installation. If you're running a custom install, well, you probably want to have the upgrade control anyways, so we're not doing automatic upgrade of those. At least not yet. If we get customer feedback, we might expand to also support automatic upgrade for those. We also added support for modern authentication during the wizard experience. So again, many customers said that, yeah, I actually have multi-factor authentication on my global admin accounts, or I'm using privileged identity management, so I only am a global admin for half an hour, or something like that. And we actually added support for that as well. So now, if you're using a global admin, you have a phone challenge, for example, you will actually get prompted for that during installation of Connect. And we also allow you to change the sign-in method. And that, again, that customers wanted to do a pilot, for example, using password synchronization. And I have to say, it's like, good, but now I actually have requirements. I need to move up to federation. We allow you to actually rerun the wizard in that case. And when you rerun the wizard, you have more options that says, yep, you can actually change the sign-in option and do a bunch of other stuff. Something we've also done is things we're doing on the service side. So this is technically things you can get to work with DirSync as well. But one is actually customers that start with a cloud identity. That is, you're creating your users directly in Azure AD, you're using PowerShell, or you use a portal. But then you said, okay, good, now I want to take over these accounts from my on-premises Active Directory. And it used to be that the only way to do that was that you had to take the immutable ID and put that on every account in Azure Active Directory, which was a challenge because it was not that easy to actually calculate the value of the immutable ID. Or if you were lucky and actually had Exchange Online, you can set the proxy address and then we do the match on proxy address. Again, if you didn't have an Exchange Online license, you had to use immutable ID. So there, we have actually introduced a new feature. You can enable it with PowerShell. And if you do that, we'll actually allow you to do the matching on the user principal name, which obviously everyone has. So you can start with that with your cloud users. Just make sure the user principal name is the same on-premises in the cloud. And when you start synchronizing, we will take over those accounts in Azure AD and make those synchronized. But you have to enable it manually using PowerShell. Another feedback we receive from customers is, how do I change my user principal names? So common scenario, someone gets married, and the user principal name, therefore, is changed. And it used to be that if a user had a license, you could not change the user principal name from the sync engine. You had to use PowerShell. That was intentional because the idea was that, oh, if you change the user principal name, the user actually might not know that you changed the user principal name. It should be warm handover, a warm handshake with the user, say, now I'm going to change your user principal name with PowerShell, and the user would know it. However, for most customers, that just didn't scale. If it's changing, it just has to change to synchronize. So again, if you want the behavior for the sync engine to be able to change the user principal name, there's another PowerShell command that you can run, and now the sync engine will be able to update your user principal name using its usual synchronization process. There's one exception to the rule, of course, and that is we cannot move between two federated domains. So if you have a user starting at contoso.com and you want to move the user to @fabricam.com, sorry, that is not working yet. In that case, you still need to use PowerShell. The next thing we are adding, and this you haven't seen yet because I'm going to show you, is actually add support for other directories. So far, it's been Active Directory only, and there was absolutely no way you can connect to any other directory. But something we are doing, and we're actually running the private preview right now. So if there's someone here who happens to be in a situation that you do not have Active Directory, but you have another LDAP directory like OpenLDAP or Novell or NetIQ as they're called nowadays, then let us know, and you can actually be testing exactly the same bit I'm going to show you right now. So with this, this actually also works together with ADFS 2016. So in ADFS 2016, we can now use another LDAP directory for authentication. In earlier versions of ADFS, it was only Active Directory. But now with Connect starting to support non-Active Directory directories for synchronization, and ADFS 2016 can also support non-Active Directory LDAP service for authentication, we can now support the entire stack as well, the entire range of non-Active Directory LDAP directories as well. So let us take a look how that actually would work. So this is my Azure AD Connect installation. Let's zoom it up so you actually can see something. So this is absolutely live. This is actually the August version of Connect. So the Connect August version actually has all the bits. It's just a hidden switch that actually enables it in this mode. So I'm going to log into my tenant. And that will hopefully work. This is always the most complex thing in a demo, is to get the password right. And it seems to have been working. It looks good. It's definitely working. Great. So if you have been installing Azure AD Connect, you recognize this page. But it used to say up here, Active Directory in this dropdown. And in this case, it says LDAP. And as you see, I have actually a few other boxes here. So what's going to be the name of my LDAP server I'm going to connect to? So it has the name LDAP.com, and I need a port number. And this LDAP is on 636. And I'm going to use SSL. You can pick something else, like Kerberos, if you have that. And I'm going to give it a username. That is not right. O equals Fabricam. It worked great. It connected. So I'm going to click Next. And that's actually going to go to the directory. It's going to look at the schema. It's going to find all my object types and all the attributes I have in this LDAP directory. And it's going to do exactly the same thing you would expect it Connect to do if this was an on-premises Active Directory. So you'll see the flow. I can select and unselect OUs if that is what I want. I'm just going to take everything. But you see it's the same experience as usual. So I'm going to quickly do a next. And as you see, it will start the installation. Well, this actually takes a while. So like all good chefs, I prepared it. And I have another server where that has already been installed. Go into exactly the same LDAP directory, actually. And as you can see over here, rather than having an Active Directory connector installed, this is the generic LDAP connector, exactly the same connector we have been shipping with FIM and MIM for a couple of years, and it's actually now shipping out of the box. And this was actually configured by Connect now, so I can open it up, and I can see all its properties. I can see the name of the server I'm connecting to. I can see the SSL certificate, so I can say, yep, this was actually the real server. And if you're looking at in the background here, we can see that it's also created all the synchronization rules, so the configuration of which attribute should flow from where to in the on-premise LDAP directory all the way up to Azure Active Directory. All that has been configured for me. You can definitely still make configuration changes as needed, but at least you have a good start. All right, so let's go back to other things we have been working on. Oh, that was a demo, by the way. And let's talk about health and data quality. So Girish already introduced this. So health is the component we are using for monitoring and operations. And we actually showed health for ADFS or last Ignite, so I'm not going to show that. Instead, I'm going to focus on the piece in the middle because there are a bunch of new stuff here. And in particular, you will find something in the middle called sync error reporting. So a common feedback we've seen, do you have emails like this? Today, if you have some kind of data problem, every time you synchronize, you will get an email saying, here are all the errors you have. And you'll get one of these every 30 minutes, because it's the default schedule. And if you have quite many of these, it can be hard to read through all these emails and try and figure out, hey, what is the problem? And to be honest, the error isn't always clear of what is really the problem here. But we are doing a bunch of stuff in this area with reducing the number of synchronization errors. So the first thing we are doing is allowing UPNs and proxy addresses to actually be automatically addressed with the sync engine itself, or I should say up in Azure Active Directory. So in Azure Active Directory, you can now enable a new behavior that allows us to actually fix objects, let's call it on the fly. And when I say on the fly, is that if we see an object and the UPN is conflicting with something else, rather than throwing an error, we will actually change the UPN on the fly to something else that makes it unique. So at least the object is in Azure Active Directory, you can get a good GAL, a global address list for exchange online. And we can do the same for proxy addresses. So today, the behavior has been that if you have two objects with the same proxy address, only one object will make it to Azure Active Directory and one will be in an error state in the sync engine. The same thing can happen now again, where we can strip out the one of the proxy addresses, and in that case, what will happen is that you will still get the object in Azure Active Directory. The data is still in a bad state, absolutely, don't get me wrong. So you still need to go back and fix it. But now you can go to the Office 365 portal, and in the Office 365 portal, you get a list of here are all the objects we have made a change to. Now go and fix them on premises. So you are making a change from being a hard error in the sync engine to be a softer error that you still need to fix. And this is something that's coming. And I'm saying this is coming is because it's for new tenants since summer, this is the default behavior. If you have an existing tenant, you will get this. Starting from this week, we're going to start changing the behavior in all tenants, and this will be the new behavior. You will get a month in advance, so look out for an email coming from us that basically says, hey, your tenant is about to get this new behavior. When you do get it, you have a month, and then you will get this new behavior. If you want to get it earlier, you absolutely can get it with some PowerShell commandlets as well. And where is my next slide? All right, so let's actually do a demo of this and how it looks like. So in health, we have several things. So I'm going to start with actually looking at operational insights. So this is my dashboard in Azure AD. And obviously, I'm really interested in synchronization, which probably isn't a big surprise to anyone here. So down here, I actually have the performance chart for my sync engine, and I can open it up and I can see, okay, what's actually happening with my tenant. This is Operations Insight. All right, it expired. That's why when you talk too long, I guess, it expires. You should get back. But what I will get is basically a view when it loads. When it loads, here we go. It's absolutely getting here. Let's try that again. And here, for example, you can see, okay, how many changes are actually happening in my on-premises directory and being synchronized up to Azure Active Directory. So I can go back in time and you can see that, okay, over here, for example, I added 4 users or objects. I made a bunch of deletes, a bunch of updates, and I have a bunch of objects still in an error state. And I can see from a different time range, run seeing 1 day, I can change that to say 3 days. And I can see what's happening. I can also see the latency. How long is it actually taking for me to run an import and sync, etc. If you're looking in the Sync Engine UI on premises, it doesn't really give you a good graph or what's the history of what's happened here. But I can do an edit here, and I can add more charts. Right now, I only have the time it took to run an export. But I can say, for example, how long will it take me to do delta import, and how long does it take to run a synchronization? And that gives me an idea of, do I actually have a problem in my environment or not? So this gives me good operational insights to it. And this is something that actually exists already today. And this is part of Azure Active Directory Premium. But something that is coming very, very soon is this piece that's called sync errors. So rather than having all these emails and going through the emails to try to figure out what is the problem, you actually get a portal experience where we actually have tried to combine the same kind of errors, and you can look at them bucket by bucket by bucket. So for example, in my scenario, I have 20 odd objects where I have a duplicate object. And I can drill into the object. So here's something that is bad. So I'll take this object over here, and I get the details. If I'm going here, let's zoom that up. You can see all the details. Both the object is in Azure Active Directory already with its attributes, and that is to the right. And then we have the object that we have a problem with, which is to my left. And you can see, for example, distinguished name to the user on premises. You can very easily find the object on premises that has a problem that I need to go after. So you can compare the two objects side by side and realize that, I see, it's a conflicting value. I can see which object it is conflicting with. So it makes it very easy for me to find my objects. Let's pick something else, like large attributes. So large attributes happens to be an object where there are too many multi-valued attributes on an object. In this case, it happens to be a user with 500 proxy addresses, and that is actually the limit. You cannot have more than 500. And here you get in a detailed description of what is wrong with the object, and also all the details for that object, so you can go and fix that object. The final thing I want to show you here is that this is, of course, using a resource manager. So no longer is this going to just one person. It used to be the email went to technical contact, and that was it. But now this can be delegated. So if I go to my directory, I have at the bottom, I have a configure users option. That should hopefully light up very, very soon. OK, it's still loading. So there we go. So this allows you to delegate using the normal Azure resources. So it's not only one person. You can just delegate this to whoever you want to. So to summarize, these are the improvements we have made in the past year, and some things that are coming to you. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Russ again, and we're going to see changes coming to authentication.
Thank you, Andreas. Hi. OK, so we're going to roll through the authentication updates, so a bit of a change of gears here. We're going to start with some new stuff. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time talking about ADFS. I'm going to introduce you to something new. So to start with, if you look at the way that we sign in users today, there's kind of a value versus complexity chart. And if we take cloud-only users, so these are users who are not synchronized and live only in the cloud, they kind of form my baseline of where I'm starting from. So adding to those, pretty straightforward, we add the Azure AD Connect guys. So now we're synchronizing attributes. We're still using cloud passwords, so they've got 2 passwords, but at least the users are keeping in sync. We got the same display names, the same groups, etc. And there's a certain amount of value to that and a bit of complexity. Not a whole bunch, but some. Adding to that, as we've been discussing, you can do Express. And when you do Express, you get both the credential data in the form of a password hash sync, as well as the directory data in the form of usernames, etc. And the users have a similar sign-on experience here, so they use the same username, same password, but it's not quite single. All right? And today there's a big jump to get to single sign-on, true single sign-on here, where the corporate users who are on domain joined machines get single sign-on to their accounts, and that's done through ADFS today. All right, or some other federation server. But it's a lot of complexity, a bunch of servers in the DMZ, a bunch of servers internal, and it adds a certain amount of complexity in that area, but at great value for the end users, especially those on corporate network. So the curve is kind of stretched today. And there's a big move between, or a big gap today between password hash sync and what ADFS is. So we had a couple of goals when we looked at this, and we said, how can we make that better without sort of compromising what people want? Okay. So a lot of customers, particularly new customers, come to us and they say, I want to authenticate against my on-premises directory. Okay. I want to auth against AD. I don't necessarily want to put my passwords in the cloud, although interestingly enough, quite a few customers who run ADFS also synchronize passwords as a backup. But we didn't want to make that a requirement. We also wanted to make sure, and this is an interesting one, there were no unauthenticated endpoints sitting on the internet. Now, ADFS actually doesn't work in this way. You have to put the ADFS server on the internet so that people outside your environment can authenticate to it, which actually means you have an unauthenticated endpoint on the internet. So it's a kind of catch-22 there, and something that we thought we could try and solve as well. And we also wanted true single sign-on, just like ADFS. We wanted to make sure that if you have a Kerberos ticket, you're sitting on your corporate PC, that you get the same sign-on experience. Log into my PC, access Office 365, Azure AD services, and you're automatically signed in. And for customers who are already been through and deployed ADFS, we wanted to give them an option that would help them reduce that total cost of ownership. So these were the goals we set out with. And what we ended up building was a couple of different solutions. So we built something that we're going to call Azure AD Pass-Through Authentication. So it's a very simple piece of technology. What it enables us to do is to validate the password in your on-prem environment. Okay? It allows for those sort of policies that we don't yet have in the cloud to be evaluated. We have lots of customers who say, I want to be able to restrict people so they can only log into the services based on logon hours. When they can log into AD, they can log into the service. You can do that with ADFS, and you can do the same thing here with this solution. We also wanted to make it very simple. We didn't want to have to deal with DMZs and make you stand up additional servers. All right? And we wanted to make it work with multi-forest customers, just like ADFS does today. So pass-through authentication allows us to achieve these sorts of goals. It's built on the Azure AD infrastructure. All right? It's a very secure way. It also allows us to ensure that there's no sort of unauthenticated endpoint on the internet. What we have is a component that sits in the on-prem environment that connects to the cloud using a cert. So there's no inbound connectivity required here, therefore no complex DMZs. And as far as high availability goes, you just deploy more of these connectors and you get high availability. and we automatically round robin between them. Effectively, what we have here, bottom line, is that we have a very similar sign-on experience without, as Federation, without the deployment costs. The second part of this, of course, was SSO. So getting single sign-on for corporate users. If you think about the way that this works, and when I say true single sign-on here, I mean I hit Control-Alt-Delete on my machine, I log into my workstation, and then I get single signed on. And if you think about the way ADFS does this, what ADFS does is effectively, when you hit the ADFS server internally, it challenges you. 401, give me a Kerberos ticket. Your machine gets a Kerberos ticket, gives it to ADFS. ADFS converts that Kerberos ticket to a SAML token, gives it back to the client sends it to the cloud. Users signed in. What we wanted to do here was effectively, if you like, cut out the middleman. All right? This transformation from a Kerberos token to a SAML token didn't seem necessary. And what we've been able to do is effectively remove that transformation need. So what that means is we're utilizing AD as it exists today. We're not doing anything particularly within inside Azure AD to handle this, or within AD. So there's no DR capability, no DR additional requirements here. As long as your AD is up and the users can log into it, we're good. Similarly, high availability. I'm assuming users can log into AD, and we've solved that problem, so we can deal with that. And we also wanted to make sure this worked from Windows 7 all the way through. Okay? So it's a very simple process for us. And the good news is that the SSO component, because of the way it was built, allows you to work not only with pass-through authentication, but also with password hash sync. So you can use either mechanism here to be able to get a true single sign-on experience for your end users. So how does that change my curve? Let's have a look. So this is my line before. So I can go ahead and say I ran Express, and I enabled the single sign-on option. So when I enable that single sign-on option, I really didn't add any particular complexity. I'll show you how it works in a minute, but we actually create a computer account in your domain, and that's it. We don't add any infrastructure. So really, the amount of complexity is about the same, but the value to your end user is somewhat higher. Now the end users are getting the same sign-on experience. We can also then say, I want to add pass-through auth. All right, so now I can get to the point where I'm very similar to what ADFS offers, or any STS offers in this case. And I'm able to get single sign-on. I've added a little bit of complexity. I have some connectors that I run on premises. But really, I've not added a whole bunch of additional complexity, but I have added additional value. I've made sure that passwords are always validated on-prem. I've solved the goals that we were dealing with. So it really kind of stretches that line up. Okay? So before I go into how this all works, I'm going to show you what it does. And then we'll go from there on how it actually works. Okay. So I'm going to show you, because everyone's seen Windows 10 this week, or will see Windows 10. I'm going to show you on my Windows 7 box here exactly how this goes through. Okay? So I've got myself a user. Got to activate Windows, apparently. I've got myself a user, so myself here. Okay? And my account, pretty straightforward, nothing too exciting here. But my account is currently enabled, working successfully. My corporate machine, okay, it's joined to the domain, but in this case, it's actually joined to the Microsoft corporate network, not to my special little network where my domain exists. So it's offline, all right? So first things first, let's have a look at what happens with pass-through authentication. So I'm going to sign in. I've already signed in, so it remembers me. When I click on my name, it's going to do the usual. Hey, you haven't signed in, you've got to sign in. Okay? So it's asking for my password. So let me type that in. And you can think of this really as forms-based authentication, similar to what you get with ADFS, but this time it's happening in the cloud. So I type my password. It's trying to sign me in, assuming all things align. And now I'm signed in, and I'm going to get to the Office page. Okay? Ready to install Office. So now we'll just close my browser. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to disable my account, click on the button, sign in again. No smoke and mirrors here. or at least we hope not. So I tried to sign in. I was trying to sign me in, sent my password back to on-prem. Oh, I forgot to hit the what did I forget to do? Apply. Very excellent. I was just making sure everyone was watching. All right, one more time. All right, we do this. We hit this button. Now I can't type my password. Okay, we're trying to sign me in, and my account's locked. All right, let's now do this because I need my account to work again in a little minute. So we'll come back over here. I've unlocked it. I've hit the right buttons. Did I type the right password? Yes, and we're in. So what you can see here is effectively my account is now, that password's passing through the cloud back to on-prem. Okay, and being validated there, and things like account disable happening automatically. All right, there's no delay in that process. All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. So really, how does this change deployment? So when you think about the way that federation works, any federation server works, there's kind of two parts to it, right? So there's a form. Oh, I forgot to show you my special secret sauce, didn't I? Let me go back. I forgot my SSO part. Sorry. Can't believe I forgot my best stuff. So what I'm going to do now is my corporate machine. Apologize. Here's my corporate machine. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect it to my local virtual network. I'm going to apply that. Make sure we use the apply button. All right. So now what you'll see is I'm actually connecting. I'll just let it go through its identity so it makes sure we're there. And you can see I'm on a new network called demo.o365 identity, which is the same as my username, right? So now I'm back inside. I'm in the corporate network. And this is what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on here. I'm going to try and sign in again. And this time, no hands near the keyboard. I'm going to click on my user account. It's going to detect I'm on the corporate network. Challenge me for a 401 for a Kerberos ticket. Get that Kerberos ticket, send it to the cloud, and log me in. All right. So I didn't have to type a password in this set. All right. So that's effectively true single sign-on. So back to the slides now. Now we can do the next bit. All right. So how does this change my deployment? So really, for federation servers, there's two things happening. When you're on a domain join machine on the corporate network with line of sight to a DC where you can get a Kerberos ticket, you're doing effectively single sign-on. So this was the second part of my demo there. That's where SSO kicks in. For those that are not connected to the corporate network, they're off the corporate network, they're not domain joined for some reason, mobile devices, for example, I'm doing pass-through authentication, I'm doing forms-based auth. So really we have these sort of two flows that we've replaced in federation. Now we separated them, but effectively we put them back together. And there's no need here for dedicated servers. In fact, a lot of the customers I talked to about pass-through auth within our preview that's currently, private preview that's currently happening, a lot of them want to be able to limit where the network connections go. So they're just deploying the pass-through auth connector on DCs so that there's no network there even. All right. SSO, as I said, a computer account in your own AD, so there's really nothing here from an infrastructure perspective that you have to take care of. No load balancers. We take care of that in the cloud. We make sure we find the right connector to send the password to. Right? There's no DMZ. All of the connections here are all outbound connections. So we've got no inbound connections. We have a connector who's listening for what's going on. And then there's just less to manage ongoing. You don't have to worry so much about DR. As long as there's a connector next to a DC, you're good to go. All right? It's very simple. There's no certificates that you need to manage. We take care of that certificate management from the connector to the cloud automatically. So the question then, of course, comes up, where would I use ADFS in this model? What would be, why would I want to still use ADFS? And there's a couple of good reasons. One, and probably the primary one, is smart card authentication. So if you use smart cards to authenticate on premises, you need to use an STS, ADFS, something of that nature, to be able to validate that smart card, to be able to challenge for that smart card certificate and be able to authenticate using them. If you're using third-party MFA solutions, the solution PTA and SSO both work with Azure AD's MFA solution, But if you're using a third-party on-premises based MFA, you still need to get authentication back to on-prem, and you do that with ADFS or some other STS. We get customers who say passwords need to be in my control boundary. As I'll show you how we actually do pass-through authentication, the password is passing through the cloud. It'll be in an encrypted form, but it is passing through the cloud. Some organizations say, no, it has to be in my control boundary. Again, another reason you would use something like ADFS. And then, of course, there's certain rich conditional access rules that you can apply only with ADFS today. Those are migrating their way to the cloud in a lot of cases, but there are still some of those items that you need to actually have an on-prem server for all that to work for you. Okay? Inside network claim is a good one. It's probably something we'll add to PTA, since we know, or SSO, in the case of SSO, we know that you are on the corporate network with line of sight to a DC because you just got a Kerberos ticket. So some of these things we can incorporate in the future of these products. So how does it work? Now for the nitty-gritty. Okay, let's start with pass-through authentication. And you can see there's a couple of things in the picture here. We have an STS in the cloud, obviously, and we have a service in the cloud, which we're calling the hybrid identity service for want of a better word. Basically what happens is, you saw me, I type my username and I type my password on that single form. There's no redirection that occurs. I don't get redirected to another service. It's built inside of Azure, or inside of Azure AD in this case. So user submits their username and password, and as I said, the plan is to encrypt the password from the browser all the way through. Once the user gets that password through, it's submitted back to the hybrid identity service, who says, okay, I know where to go. I'm going to go and find a connector on-prem and put it on that queue. So while the arrow here points down, going towards the connector, it's actually not, it's a logical flow. The connector is reaching out, grabbing that, saying, I've got work to do. Let me get hold of that password and pull it down. When it pulls that username and password down, it's going to decrypt it there with the key that it has, and only the connector has. And then it's going to send it off to AD. And it uses the same Win32 APIs that ADFS uses. And as I said, if you really don't want that password, username and password going over the network, you can install the connector directly on a DC or a set of DCs. The DC will return a result, so it'll say the account's locked, as you saw in my example. It can do passwords have expired, etc. And if you have password write-back, the solution will help you deal with the write-back of that. But it gets some sort of result, whatever that result happens to be. It passes it back up through the channel up to the service. Service submits it across to the STS and with the result. The STS then says, cool, if everything worked well, you get a token. At this point, you have satisfied the password requirements. And you can now go and do MFA. If an application requires MFA, or if you've got Azure MFA enabled for all applications, you would do MFA at this point. All right? And that's kind of how pass-through auth works in a nutshell. All right? SSO. Just like federation, there's kind of a two-step process for SSO. The first step in that process is pretty straightforward. You go to AD and you create a machine account. In fact, we go to AD and create a machine account. When we create that machine account, we set some things on it. Obviously, we set the SPNs of the URLs that we use in the cloud, and we also set the password of that machine account. Having that password allows us to then send that to Azure AD, along with the details of the machine account. We need to know what domain it was, what forest, etc. And we store that in an encrypted at-rest store within Azure AD. Just like we protect other passwords in the cloud, we protect this password as well. What that allows us to do then is decrypt the Kerberos ticket. So to make sure that machines automatically send the username and password to the service, we need a group policy. We need to tell all the machines what the intranet zone is for these URLs. And by doing so, that allows us to get the automatic logon experience. This is the same you would do for ADFS or any other STS, so that the browser automatically sends those credentials. So now at runtime, how does it work? So if you're familiar with the way that you get integrated auth, Windows integrated auth to any IIS server around the planet, what you end up doing is you submit a request, you hit the URL says no, you must authenticate, returns with a 401 negotiate. You go ahead, the client says my 401. Client then says, okay, I know that SPN. I'm going to go and look up that service principal name. This is the one we created earlier. It finds the machine account that we created. The AD issues a Kerberos token to the client to talk to that particular machine account. Great, says the client, sends it up to the cloud. Cloud gets that token. We decrypt that token. We verify that it's a valid Kerberos ticket. We take the SID out of that. We look the user up with SID. Okay. Now we've got the user, we can return a token. Here we go, you've got your token now. And if things like MFA needed to kick in, they would kick in at this point. So what we've really got here is effectively a solution where, just like you would for integrated auth with ADFS or any website on-prem, we are now just basically taking that Kerberos ticket and allowing the cloud to be able to understand what its contents are and find the user account. So the big question, when's it available? I didn't hear anybody ask. So as I said, it's currently in a private preview. We have a number of customers rolling this through. This is an authentication feature, all right? Authentication features, you don't really get a chance to get it wrong. So we're doing quite a lot of testing here with a lot of customers in the private preview, some of them rolling it through to production for us so that we can make sure we have the right runs on the board so that when we release it broadly, we know it has lots of scale and will work as we expect it to work. So our target is in that first half of the calendar year, next calendar year, 2017. We will probably public preview before then, but don't hold me to any particular dates at this point. But we wanted to make sure you had a good feel for it. All right, Girish.
All right. Exciting, exciting stuff. I know, this is super exciting for us. How many of you are on ADFS today? All right.
Excellent.
How many of those who raise their hands find value in the couple of features Ross talked about from a lowering your TCO? Excellent. Good, good, good. I was expecting more claps when he finished that demo. Wasn't that exciting? All right, good. Here's your claps for the demo. We've been at work at this for a while now, and we're super excited to get this out as soon as possible. Ross gave you some of the dates, but we're trying to get there sooner than that. But we'll keep you posted. Watch out for our blogs on this one. So we released a bunch of, we rarely do this. We rarely talk about, at a big conference like this, we rarely talk about stuff that's still in private preview and announced it is coming. So consider yourselves lucky, because you've now seen us announce a few things that are still in private preview or coming up on private preview that we're going to release more broadly. You saw Andreas talk about LDAP and the connectors. How many of you have LDAP directories that you'd love to see integrated with Azure AD? Okay, a few of you. All right. How many of those who raise your hands, how many of you have both AD and LDAP versus LDAP exclusive? Okay, AD and LDAP. Yeah, that's what I figured. Excellent. So in the Azure AD Connect space, in the hybrid space as a whole, our endeavor continues to remain, how do we enable you to connect your on-premises environment to the cloud as simplistically as possible? How do we lower the barriers of entry into the cloud? And so the features that Ross and Andreas talked about here are really stepping stones to bringing down that cost, bringing down that effort required to move up into the cloud, right? Another dimension of this was not just about the LDAP features or the new Auth features, but the other dimension of this is about, the sync error reporting stuff and the Azure AD Health work that Andreas talked about, right? People have told us that the error reporting and the fact that there's so many data issues on their path to integrating AD with Azure AD is a huge pain point. So what you've seen us do with Azure AD Health and some of the sync service features in the cloud to reduce these data dissonance, to reduce the issues with data conflicts, is a huge step that we believe will really, again, help you more smoothly transition up from on-prem into the cloud, right? So I want to close this with a quick recap then, right? We firmly believe that Azure AD Connect is the best tool that you have to connect from on-prem into the cloud for a variety of reasons. I talked about how it bolsters productivity, how it lowers your TCO, and all these features that they talked about really is testament to that, right? For those of you who are still on DirSync, who've not upgraded yet, upgrade today. There's a bunch of new features coming up, and you want to be on Azure AD Connect to get at those. And for those of you who've not yet upgraded or are hitting challenges, come talk to us here offline and we'll help you work through those, right? And the last big thing, this is huge for us. This is the couple of features that Ross talked about. Pass-through authentication, desktop SSO are critical features for us to help that easy sign-on up into the cloud, right? With that, I'll just leave this slide up for, I'll leave this slide up for you to do your evaluation. But the preceding slide, which I'll put up in a couple of seconds here, is about the other sessions that you should consider on your EMS journey here, right? So I'll switch this off in another 3 seconds and I'll go back to the previous, so I'll leave you with those sessions. With that, we have about, right, we did well on time, guys. This is great. We have about 10 minutes. We can take some questions either up at the mics or you can come up here and we can chat more. Thank you, folks. Appreciate your time.